I'm 79 years old, and I need to admit something that took me most of my life to understand. I thought avoiding conflict would save my marriage. I was wrong. The silence I mistook for harmony slowly destroyed it. I believe good couples didn't fight. I believe staying quiet kept things safe. But every time I swallowed what I felt, I was putting distance between us. Her name was Janet. We met when I was 31 at a community picnic. She was confident, opinionated, not afraid to speak her mind. It attracted me immediately because I was the opposite: quiet, careful, someone who thought 10 times before speaking once. I think she liked that about me at first. She said I was thoughtful, a good listener, someone who didn't need to fill every silence with noise. We got married within a year. The early days were easy because everything was new and exciting. We didn't have much to disagree about. We were building a life together, and the small irritations didn't seem worth mentioning. She'd leave dishes in the sink, and I'd just wash them. I'd forget to call when I was running late, and she'd let it go. We were being considerate, or so I thought. Really, we were just learning to bury things. The first real issue came about 3 years in. She wanted to move closer to her parents. They were aging, and she wanted to be nearby to help. I didn't want to move. I had a stable job where we were. I had friends. I liked our neighborhood. But when she brought it up, I could see how much it mattered to her. And I didn't want to disappoint her. I didn't want to seem selfish, so I said okay. I told her it was fine, that we'd make it work, but it wasn't fine. I resented that move every single day. I resented driving 40 minutes to work. I resented starting over in a new place. I resented spending every weekend helping at her parents' house when I just wanted to relax. But I never said any of that. I kept it inside because I thought that's what good husbands did. They sacrificed without complaint. Janet never knew. She thought I was happy with the decision because I'd agreed to it. She'd thank me sometimes, tell me how much it meant to her that I was so supportive. And I'd smile and say it was no problem. Meanwhile, the resentment was building inside me like pressure in a sealed container. That became the pattern. She had strong opinions. I had quiet objections I never voiced. I told myself I was being easygoing. But really, I was just disappearing. The problem with silence is that it doesn't actually make things disappear. It just pushes them underground where they grow in the dark. Every unspoken frustration, every swallowed complaint, every time I said fine when I meant this hurts, all of it accumulated. And I started to change. I became withdrawn, passive. I'd agree to things and then quietly resent them. I'd punish her with coldness instead of honest words. She noticed, of course. How could she not? But when she'd ask what was wrong, I'd say nothing. I'd tell her I was just tired or stressed about work or coming down with something. Anything except the truth. And she'd accept it at first, but I could see the frustration building in her too, the confusion. She knew something was off, but I kept insisting everything was fine. I remember one particular fight, though we didn't call it that. I was maybe 52. She wanted to spend a significant amount of money on a trip to see her sister across the country. I thought it was too much. We were trying to save for retirement. But when she brought it up, excited and already half planning it, I just nodded. said it sounded nice, watched her book the tickets, and then I was cold to her for 2 weeks before the trip. Short answers, no affection. She kept asking what she'd done wrong. I kept saying nothing. Finally, the night before we were supposed to leave, she broke down crying and said, "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep guessing what I did to upset you." I should have told her then. Should have said I didn't want to spend the money, that I felt like my opinion didn't matter, that I was scared about our financial future. But I didn't. I just said she was being dramatic, that I was fine and she was overreacting. We went on the trip. It was miserable. And when we came back, we just went back to our separate silences. The years passed like that. We existed in the same house, shared the same life, but we stopped really talking. Not about anything that mattered. We talked about schedules and groceries and what needed fixing. But we never talked about us, about how I felt invisible, about how she felt like she was living with a stranger. We just kept the surface calm while everything underneath rotted away. Our kids left for college, then got married, started their own families, and suddenly it was just Janet and me, and we had nothing to say to each other. We'd sit at dinner in complete silence, not comfortable silence, the kind of silence that screams. She tried, in her way. She'd suggest things. Maybe we should take a class together. Maybe we should see a counselor. Maybe we should talk about why we felt so distant. And every time I'd deflect, say we were fine. Say every long marriage went through phases like this. Say we didn't need outside help. Because talking about it, really talking about it, felt more terrifying than continuing to live in that quiet hell. I thought I was keeping the peace, but there's no peace in silence. There's just absence. The breaking point came when I was 74. We were at our daughter Amy's house for Thanksgiving. The whole family was there, and I watched Amy and her husband have a disagreement right there at the table. Something about whose family they'd visit for Christmas. They didn't hide it. They didn't smile and say everything was fine. They just talked about it. A little heated, sure, but honest. They listened to each other. They compromised. And then they moved on, still loving each other. Maybe even closer for having worked through it. And I realized Janet and I had never done that. Not once. Not in over 40 years. We'd never fought and then reconciled. We'd never disagreed and then understood each other better. We'd just avoided and avoided and avoided until there was nothing left to avoid for. That night in the guest room at Amy's house, Janet said something that broke me. She said, "I don't think you've ever really let me know you. The real you. I've been married to you for 43 years, and I don't know what you actually think or feel about anything." She was right. I'd been so busy keeping peace that I'd never let her see the parts of me that might cause friction. I'd edited myself into a pleasant stranger, and in doing that, I'd robbed both of us of a real marriage. I tried to explain. Tried to tell her I thought I was protecting us, that I didn't want to fight. She just looked at me with this deep sadness and said, "I would have rather fought with you 1,000 times than lived with this silence. At least fighting would have meant you cared enough to be honest." We separated 6 months later. She said she couldn't spend whatever time she had left living with someone who wouldn't really talk to her. Someone who wouldn't fight with her, disagree with her, be fully present with her. And I understood. By the time I was finally ready to be honest, to speak up, to risk conflict, it was too late. The damage was done. Here's what I know now. Silence doesn't save relationships, it suffocates them. Every time you don't say what you're really thinking, every time you agree when you want to disagree, every time you keep the peace by keeping quiet, you're creating distance. You're building a wall, and eventually that wall becomes too high to climb over. Fighting isn't the enemy of love. Dishonesty is. Hiding is. Pretending everything is fine when it's not. Healthy couples fight because they care enough to be real with each other. They disagree because they have their own thoughts and feelings, and they trust each other enough to share them. The problem isn't the conflict, it's the contempt, the cruelty, the refusal to listen or compromise. But I didn't know how to fight fairly. I only knew how to avoid. And Janet paid the price for that just as much as I did. She spent 4 decades trying to connect with someone who kept himself locked away. She deserved better. We both did. If you're watching this and you're biting your tongue right now about something that matters, stop. Say it. Not cruelly, not to wound, but honestly. Tell your partner what you're really thinking, what you're really feeling. Give them a chance to know the real you, even if it creates tension, especially if it creates tension. Your relationship can survive disagreement. It can survive arguments. It can even survive anger, if you work through it together. But it can survive silence, not the kind that hides truth, not the kind that builds walls instead of bridges. I'm 79 years old and I live alone now. Janet has her own life. She's found peace, I think, maybe even happiness, and I'm glad for her. But I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what we could have had if I'd just been brave enough to speak. If I trusted her enough to let her see my anger, my disappointment, my disagreement. If I'd loved her enough to fight with her instead of just quietly fading away. I thought silence would protect my marriage. Instead, it destroyed it more thoroughly than any argument ever could have. That's what I should have realized 40 years ago.